It's one of those big questions we all think about at some point. Why are some countries just incredibly wealthy, while others that seem to have so much going for them are really struggling? Well, the answer is probably not what you'd expect, and honestly, it's way more interesting than you might think.
I mean, it just doesn't seem to make any sense, right? You see a massive country, it's got huge forests, mines packed with valuable minerals, and you just assume it has to be rich. And then you look at this tiny, crowded island with basically nothing, and it's one of the wealthiest places on the planet. This exact paradox, well, that's the key to figuring this whole thing out.
It's the obvious answer, isn't it? If your country has oil, or diamonds, or gold, you should be set. It's like finding a winning lottery ticket buried in your backyard. For a long, long time, this was what everyone thought. But what if that simple, easy explanation is just plain wrong?
Okay, let's just blow that idea right out of the water. On one hand, you have the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country sitting on literally trillions of dollars worth of minerals that are essential for our smartphones. Trillions. Yet the average person there lives on about $650 a year. On the other hand, you have Singapore, a little island with no natural resources to speak of. Their GDP per person is over 120 times higher. This isn't just some weird exception. It tells us something incredibly important about wealth. In fact, there's a name for this, the resource curse. Sometimes having all that easy wealth just fuels corruption and conflict, and it stops a country from building a real, diverse economy, making it poorer in the long run. Crazy, right?
All right, so this is where it gets really interesting. We've just thrown out the old, simple map that said, wealth is here. We need a new one. And the secret, as it turns out, isn't just one thing. It's a powerful mix of things. And the first, and arguably the most important piece of the puzzle, is something you can't even see or touch.
So let's talk about the foundation. Before you can build anything, a business, a life, a future, you have to know that the ground you're standing on is solid. For a country, that solid ground is what we call institutions.
Now, institutions might sound like a boring academic word, but I promise you it's the most real-world concept there is. All it means is, what are the rules of the game? Can you actually own your property and know that nobody's going to just take it from you? Is the court system fair, or can rich people just buy their way out of trouble? Do you have to bribe 10 different people just to get a license for a small shop? Those are the rules that shape everything.
Think about what all this stuff actually creates. A stable government means you're not constantly worried about a civil war breaking out. Strong property rights mean that if you build a business, it's actually yours. The rule of law means the rules apply to everyone, not just the little guys. And low corruption means the whole game isn't rigged from the start. It all comes down to one simple, powerful word: trust. If you don't have trust, money leaves, talented people leave, you get that whole brain drain thing, and the economy just stalls because nobody is willing to risk anything on the future.
Yeah, no way, right? You would never pour your life savings into building a beautiful house on a piece of land that you know could just collapse in a mudslide. A country's economy is exactly the same. People aren't going to invest their time, their money, their energy if they think it can all be wiped out tomorrow by a corrupt official or a sudden change in government.
But when that trust is there, oh man, that's when things really start to happen. People start thinking past next week. A farmer invests in a new irrigation system because she knows she'll be around to benefit from it in 5 years. An inventor starts a company because they trust the legal system will protect their patents. This is how real wealth is created, not by digging it out of the ground, but by building a society where people can trust each other and the system.
And look, it's not just me saying this. The brilliant economist Hernando de Soto nailed it. He said, the single most important factor in the economic success of nations is the rule of law. It's like the invisible architecture that holds up the entire economy. But a strong foundation is only the beginning. You still have to build the house.
Okay, so if institutions are the foundation, then a nation's people, they're the ones who actually build everything. They're the architects, the inventors, the entrepreneurs. They're the engine. And this takes us right back to Singapore. They looked around, saw they had no oil or minerals, and realized their only resource was right there, in the minds of their people. So they bet everything on what we call human capital, which is just the skills, the knowledge, the health, and the creativity of the entire population. And that bet paid off, big time. And it creates this incredible upward spiral. It starts with great education for as many people as possible. That creates a highly skilled workforce. When you have skilled workers and fair rules, you create a space where new ideas and innovation can just explode. And all that innovation leads to new technologies and better ways of doing things, which creates even more wealth. It just keeps feeding itself. And when you look at the numbers, the difference is just whoa. Take South Korea. They invest a huge portion of their entire economy back into research and development. In the 1960s, South Korea was poorer than many African nations. It had nothing. But they made a national obsession out of education and building new industries. They didn't have iron, so they decided to make steel. They didn't have electronics, so they built Samsung from a company selling noodles into a global giant. They proved that you don't just find prosperity, you have to actively, relentlessly build it.
And hey, when we say technology, don't just picture a brand new smartphone. Technology is also a new type of seed that can double a farmer's harvest. It's a new financial system that lets a small business owner get a loan easily. It's simply the knowledge of how to do things better. It's the constant hunt for a more efficient way. And this, right here, is maybe the most important takeaway. You could have the most brilliant people in the world, but if they live in a system where their ideas get stolen or they can't get a business off the ground without paying bribes, well, that talent just goes to waste. The real magic, the explosion of growth, happens when you combine smart, educated people with the system of fair, stable rules. That's the winning formula.
But I know what some of you are probably thinking. Okay, but what about geography? Where a country is has to matter. And you know what? You're right, it does. But it's more of a nudge than a destiny.
Sure, 100 years ago, geography was almost everything. Having a good river or a natural port could make you a global power. But today, while it still plays a role, it's often more of an excuse than a real reason for why a country is poor.
Look, geography can definitely hand you certain advantages or disadvantages. Being on the coast is great for trade. Being landlocked is tough. A tropical climate might have more diseases to deal with. These are real challenges that countries have to figure out.
But just look at this. It's a perfect example. Both Botswana and Switzerland were dealt a pretty tough geographic hand. They're both landlocked, which used to be seen as an economic death sentence. Botswana is mostly desert, Switzerland is all mountains. But they didn't let that stop them. Switzerland focused on things that don't need a seaport, like high-tech manufacturing and stable banking. And Botswana, after discovering diamonds, used its strong democratic institutions to make sure that money was invested back into the country for everyone, turning a potential resource curse into a huge blessing. They both prove that smart policies can beat bad geography.
So it really is like being dealt a hand of cards in a game. Geography gives you your starting hand. It doesn't decide if you win or lose. A really skilled player with a so-so hand will beat a terrible player with amazing cards almost every time. And in this game, good institutions and skilled people, that's what makes you a skilled player.
Okay, so we've looked at the invisible foundation of a country's rules, the engine of its people, and the starting hand of its geography. Let's put it all together and finally answer that big question.
We've torn down the simple answers, we've gone through all the complex layers. We've been looking for that one magic bullet, that single secret ingredient that explains it all. So what is it?
And the big reveal, the shocking truth, is that there isn't one. The whole search for a single ingredient is a trap. Prosperity isn't a recipe where you just add one thing and you're done. It's so much more interconnected than that.
See, a nation's wealth is what's called an emergent property. It's a fancy term, but all it means is that wealth isn't caused by one thing. It emerges from all these different pieces interacting with each other. Good rules make people feel safe enough to innovate. Educated people come up with new ideas. And those successful people then demand even better, fairer rules. It creates a positive feedback loop, a virtuous cycle.
The best way to think about it is like a rainforest. You can't just point to one thing and say, that's why it's a rainforest. Is it the rain, the soil, the sunlight? No, it's all of them, working together, each part supporting the others. A rich country is just like that. It's a healthy, thriving economic ecosystem.
And so that leaves us with one last big thought. The old idea that wealth is just about the luck of what's in the ground, that's a world where your fate is sealed by geology. But the truth is actually much more exciting and much more hopeful. It tells us that prosperity isn't found, it's built. It's built on a foundation of fair rules that unleash the potential inside every single person. And that's a much more powerful idea to build a world on.